I'm Tom Johnson, Thomas Johnson Antique Furniture Restoration in Gorham, Maine. Often I take a break from repairing furniture and making videos and answer my emails and comments. I get a lot of questions from viewers concerning their furniture and restoration projects. If you have a question for me, send an email along with photos to thomasjohnsonrestoration@gmail.com. If you'd like to send a video, you can upload that here on YouTube with the hashtag AskTomJohnson. Take a look. Dear Thomas, I am puzzled by the wood on this piece. The pictures show it after being gently cleaned with soap and water. I have not polished it or altered the finish in any way. Is this maple or some other wood? If it's maple, is it likely the stain that has given it this copper color? I want to preserve the finish if it is the original finish. If it is not the original finish and there's beautiful yellow maple underneath, only then would I consider stripping it and refinishing it. Wow, this wood is incredible. It's a bird's eye maple, but it's also got an incredible quilted pattern. You can see that in the drawer front here. A quilted pattern, a bird's eye pattern. Some of it has the tiger stripe in it. I think we can call it quilted bird's eye maple. Absolutely great. And the color, I personally love the color of this piece. And I also thought as soon as I saw it, the color would be greatly enhanced by using my favorite varnish, Waterlox Tung Oil Varnish, the original. And I did that to a piece, my latest video. It's exactly what I did. You can see here, I mix up a cleaning solution. I like Crud Cutter. That may be a bit harsh, but I do a very, very mild, very diluted solution, like maybe 750 milliliters of water and like 60 milliliters of Crud Cutter. So that's greater than a 1:10 ratio. This piece had been outside for quite a while, so I really gave it a scrub down using a Scotch-Brite pad. Maybe on a piece that was not such bad condition, you could just use a rag and be very gentle. I could see the color come to life when it was wet with water. Now, I let it dry at least overnight. It just so happens I let this dry for a couple of days. And then I started to apply the varnish. I believe I ended up using about 3 coats of varnish before it really took and looked the way that I wanted it to look. I think the same treatment would just do wonders for that beautiful chest of drawers. No doubt it'd come out looking pretty good. Our next viewer sent a video showing a very common and annoying problem. Let's look.
Hey Tom, love your channel. We had a question about our bedside table. There is a glass knob that is really loose, and I don't know how to fasten it so that it isn't loose anymore. And I was wondering if you could tell me how to do that at home.
There's a lot of situations where you run into where drawer knobs aren't attached correctly or just not in place. Let's talk about it. Installing knobs on antique furniture, usually you run into problems because of the inside of the drawer face where the hole's been ruined over the years. Our viewer who sent in the video has an additional problem. She has a glass knob. I don't have a glass knob, but I have a wooden one that uses a machine screw. She has a wood screw. She needs to go to the hardware store and buy a machine screw the proper length to fit through that glass knob and then protrude through the drawer front. A machine screw is a screw that's threaded to accept a nut. This is a new knob, and this is the weeny little nut they sent with it. Put the screw through, put on the nut, but you know, it's all messed up. It's never going to tighten. So what do? The most obvious solution is to put a washer on there. In this case, I'm putting on 2 washers. Position them where I want them, and I'll turn the knob to tighten it. Not very pretty, but that works. A more common problem is when a regular wood screw goes through to the knob, but this part's all chewed out, and that the more you tighten it, the more it's going to dig out that wood. Once again, you can add a flat washer, but that doesn't look very good, and you've got a sharp edge here. In which case I'll use this type of a washer. It's called a finish washer. And that can make a nice, neat job of it. Those fixes worked out well. I was able to solve them just with the use of these washers. But it can get more complicated sometimes. There's more problems. And I'll go over that in the future. But in the meantime, I think you can get that knob on that little drawer. So I think once you have the knobs attached well and wax up those drawer runners and the drawer sides, and I think you'll be able to stand back and say, wow, this drawer works pretty well. This one is from Jim, and he's a professional repair person and upholsterer. Hi Tom, curious question. Did you ever make a reusable clamping call for the crest rail of balloon back chairs? There are 3 of them in the shop right now. When I've been able to clamp them with multiple blocks, I was wondering if anyone found an easier method. You know, often when I tackle a balloon back chair, I start off with the band clamp. And they're very versatile clamps. They can go around round objects and all kinds of different objects. And then tension is provided by this ratcheting mechanism. Jim writes, I will check your YouTube channel to see if you have a video on it. If you've made something, would you mind sharing a pic? Yeah, I did. And here you can see I've already done a lot of work on the chair, but I'm adding these pieces I'm gluing these pieces that were broken off, and now I'm attaching the crest rail. I'm using hide glue here. You can see it's tough to get down, but you can believe I tried that first dry without glue before the video. I tension the band clamp. It's bringing it down into position. I should say it's holding it in position. I was very fortunate with this chair in that crest rail aligned really well with those back support pieces that meet with it, because that's often a problem. And Jim wrote back, Hi Tom. I did scan your videos yesterday and saw you used a band clamp. Attached is a pic of what I wound up doing with the first chair. The blocks on the vertical were to keep the rail aligned. Then I clamped a horizontal piece of MDF that bent with the form of the chair. This allowed me to run 2 vertical squeeze clamps. I usually only use the squeeze clamps for quick holds while I add pipe clamps, but this setup seemed to work. I like what Jim did, and I've done very similar things myself where you have to clamp pieces to the piece of furniture to give you a surface from which then to put more clamps to apply the pressure. I think that looks pretty good. Our next letter, Howdy from Texas. Found you on YouTube. I picked up a spinet desk today at Goodwill. It had been painted. I can't find a brand stamp anywhere, but it may have been stained before it was painted. The hardware looks old, and it has those tiny nails underneath. My question is it safe for me to strip the paint off, and if so, should I take it apart to do so? Cheers. Yes, it's definitely safe to strip it, and in fact, if you're interested in the new kind of eco-friendly green strippers, there's a very good article by Bob Flexner in Woodshop News called Green Strippers. I would refer to that article. And I did a spinet desk myself. I didn't strip it. it was the original mahogany color. I cleaned it, sanded it, and recoated it. But in the second part of your question is yes, definitely take it apart. And I don't mean take the legs and that structure apart necessarily, but all the folding parts, the lid, the fall front desk, all those parts. You can see here from my video where I did a very similar desk, and here I'm varnishing the parts, and I think that yours will come out pretty good too. Hi there. I saw a Berkey and Gay sideboard, and despite all 8 legs are compromised to various degrees, and all will need to be repaired. All are lateral breaks. One is completely broken, and the others are on the verge of completely broken. I understand inserting wood dowels with wood glue, but I'm not sure what kind of glue to use and to keep so many leg repairs square. Can you please give me some advice? Boy, that is a beautiful, beautiful piece of furniture. This type of furniture is frequently referred to as estate furniture, coming from the early first half of the 20th century, and it's usually extremely high quality. I know this brand is. Gluing those legs up so that they're straight and square is a problem. And you can see in this video, this is a table with, it only has 4 legs, makes it a little bit easier, but you can see here how I take the broken leg. It's really ragged, but carefully I managed to get it back together. And what I've done here to keep it square is, you'll see, I took some boards and I measured this all up carefully and did it dry first. I measured up these boards, cut holes so that they would fit over the leg, and a little block to help clamp it up. And there you go. I'm positive, I can feel positive that that leg is in the proper position. But then it goes on. Now, once you take it off of once you take the clamps off, then you have to recut that leg very carefully. And I show in this video how I take the saw, I go around and around, trying to make a perfect cut. And I get that done, and then I mark off the centers. That's called a center finding gauge. And you got to decide on what size dowel to put in the leg. I would never go more than 50%. In other words, if a leg was 1 inch in diameter, I might use a 1/2 inch dowel at the largest. This particular leg was like 1 1/4 inches in diameter, and I believe I used a 1/2 inch dowel. But you want to leave plenty of wood around that dowel. And I drill it. I just drill it freehand as best I can. Often I'll get someone to help me spot it to keep everything straight and as true as possible. And then I glue it up with the dowel. And you can see here I use conventional wood glue, Titebond wood glue. That's the best for a repair like this. And use the same 2 boards to keep that leg exactly in place. Now, for a big cabinet like the sideboard shown in the photo, I may make 1 board that goes all the way across the front and catch all 4 legs, like cut a piece of plywood or something to the proper width. Catch all 4 legs, tie them into the back, so that I might not glue them all at the same time, but I would always use that jig to make sure everything stays in alignment at all times. It's, you know, there's a lot of little technical aspects involved here. I hope this person has some woodworking experience, and I think it'll work out. Okay, next letter. I have a sewing machine cabinet I'm not sure of the age of as of yet. I need to repair or replace some of the veneer that's coming off. What glue would you recommend I use for repairing the areas that have not completely chipped off again? I hope you can give me some good advice as to supplies I need to restore the cabinet. Yeah, I have a lot of videos showing veneer repairs. You don't need a lot of tools. You need a couple of knives, palette knife, an old kitchen knife, some tape, and of course, I like using the old brown glue. You identify your areas that need to be repaired. If veneer is missing, you maybe straighten off the edge, put your new patch down, tape that patch into the exact place where you want it to end up. You can see that I'm doing that here. And then I can open it up like a book, put down the veneer, and clamp it up. And I know that the tape's holding it in the exact right position. And depending on the size of the patch and the nature of it, and it's the same sort of technique for re-gluing veneer too. Sneak under it with some glue using your knives or a syringe, and then clamp it up. Sometimes where you put down new pieces are going to require some spot finishing. Well, here's another letter. Mr. Johnson, from you. I recently was asked to refinish the top of a drop leaf kitchen table with leaves. Upon inspection, the splayed legs had broken. As you can see, 2 have broken off completely, and the other 2 are cracked. I certainly would appreciate any guidance you could give me, but certainly understand if you cannot. Thank you very much. Well, I can. And I've done a lot of tables like this, and I think I've got down a pretty good method. These breaks like this typically are what you call grain breaks, which mean they break along the grain, and so they will go back together perfectly and form a very, very strong joint just using conventional wood glue. The tough part is, clamping them. And so you can see here in the video, I position the piece and I'm planning out how I'm going to clamp it. And so I make a block. I've got to I do this frequently, make a block of wood that I can attach to the piece of furniture that then gives me something to clamp to. And you can see that I'm doing this here. Figuring all out my angles. I cut a piece of scrap wood, a 2x4, test it out, dry. Doing this leg, I started doing it one way. I decided I didn't need a block for one of the glue ups, but I got everything lined up. I apply the glue. I apply blocks on the side, clamped up to keep that leg straight. And then you can see that I've got my downward pressure with that block I screwed to the bottom of the leg. The other clamp, I didn't need a block. Take everything off. It looks like a mess at that point. So you clean off, all that glue will clean off with water. And then you do have to sand that area, fill with putty, and do some spot finishing. That's always a problem, but you work it out. And then in addition, I've got it all glued up. It's good and strong, but here's the thing about the table being so heavy. You can see that I've drilled in. I carefully laid out exactly where I want screws, square across that break. And I put 2 good-sized screws in. And as far as the metal across the bottom goes, that's a good idea. You frequently see that on any pedestal table. They use little weeny pieces of metal here originally, and I took a piece of aluminum strap from the hardware store and made much sturdier braces. So you've got the glue, very good glue joint. I've got screws in there holding it together too, and then a much improved and heavier duty brace along the bottom. I feel pretty confident that that leg's going to stay where it's supposed to be. That table came out looking pretty good, and I'm sure the writers will also. Here's another one. My clock friend brought this case to restore. It's a Sonora nesting ball collector's clock. It had been primed, then painted with gold tone. When I stripped it with citrus strip, I found that in order to make the primer stick, they really roughed it up with 80 or 100 sandpaper. The customer wants it mahogany. I am just in a quandary about how to get a finish over and to hide those horrible scratch marks. Yeah, that's a nice little clock case, and I can't believe those scratches. It's amazing. But you just have to sand them out. Now, I made a video where I was repairing a clock, but I had a very similar sanding situation. In my video, where I had to do repair work to a similarly sized clock, I also had the same problem of sanding into corners. And what I have to advise you to do is to always use a block. I'm using, here in the video, I'm using different size blocks, a curved block for the moldings, and then I'm using a hard sanding block with sandpaper going with the grain, but getting into those corners, and sand till all that damage is gone. You just have to be careful. Now, this is a good one. Hi, Tom. You said questions are welcomed, so today I enjoyed your iconic chair episode with the designer chairs. You repeated something you say almost every episode, but I've never seen one where you explain the why of it. Each time you discover a newly created chip or an existing loose piece that crops up, you always admonish us to glue it down immediately. I always wonder your reasons. I can clearly see that for someone like me, I have ADHD and am easily distracted, so I might forget to follow through. The piece might get lost or overlooked until some other repair interfered with its placement. But is there more construction-based reason, such as the receiving wood swelling, the chip's edge becoming misshapen, or another potentially damaging complication? Losing the piece is danger enough, I would admit, but there always seems to be a note of urgency in your voice, as if failing to reattach the piece immediately might have other, more troublesome repercussions. So there you have question of the week. Well, you named, in your letter you named all the reasons. In fact, you can see here, I was dismantling this frame, and there was a chip in the wood where a nail had chipped it. So when I took everything apart, it was already chipped. And to set that aside, even to put it in a little cup and marked, oh, I'm going to glue it later. With every minute that goes by, the chances of that chip ending up right back exactly where it belongs are quickly diminishing. So the most efficient, the best, the quickest way to do it is to get it glued back down. You can forget about it. So if you have a question about your furniture or your projects, email your question and some photos to thomasjohnsonrestoration@gmail.com, or upload a video on YouTube with the hashtag AskTomJohnson. And maybe I can get your furniture to look pretty good.